2 weeks after meeting with Trump in Alaska, Putin probably used every tool at his disposal to show that he has no intention of honoring any agreements, that all his talk of peace is just a smokescreen, and the only thing he really wants is to keep on killing. A drawn-out peace process, or more accurately, the imitation of one instead of actually stopping the war, is the tactic the Kremlin has chosen for now. Fear and blood are the foundations on which Putin's power vertical stands. And the so-called special military operation serves as a solid support for that. Through war spending, Russia maintains its key GDP indicators. The war is used to justify repression and cuts to social programs. On top of that, the war helps cover up any corruption schemes. Many believe that the Putin regime is deeply afraid of the processes that will begin inside Russia once the fighting stops. And that's why the Kremlin will continue to do everything possible to mislead President Trump of the United States.
This is an integral part of the Kremlin strategy aimed at pulling Trump along, avoiding his anger or at least softening it. Moreover, an abrupt end to the conflict could threaten Putin's regime. A rapid withdrawal from a wartime economy would pose the risk of dangerous socio-political strife and provoke fierce competition for dwindling resources at all levels. From a publication by Politico.
While Trump announced a meeting between Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and Putin and hinted that he might even join it himself, the Kremlin was busy erecting new barriers to prevent the summit from taking place. Moscow once again rejected the proposal for a ceasefire. The head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Lavrov, demanded veto power over any Western security guarantees for Kyiv and later, in an interview with the American channel NBC, began talking about the alleged illegitimacy of Volodymyr Zelenskyy and blaming Europe for disrupting the peace process. Here, Russia is pursuing two goals at once: to prolong the war and to undermine the unity of the Allies.
Kyiv needs reliable security guarantees. I envision a broad approach based on several pillars. And the most important one is that, right now, the Ukrainian armed forces must be continuously strengthened in terms of weaponry, funding, and training. Europe must do everything necessary to make this happen. I've already noticed this week that Putin is clearly not ready to meet with President Zelenskyy. He is putting forward completely unacceptable preconditions. He keeps stalling, and when there were talks with President Trump, things sounded completely different. It all sounded very different back then. I'm not surprised, because this is part of Putin's strategy to act this way.
The massive shelling of Ukraine on the night of August 28th once again showed the whole world that Putin's goal is the destruction of Ukraine. 600 drones and 30 missiles attacking peaceful cities. That's his argument at any negotiating table. As Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated, Russia really wanted to show that it is capable of striking not only Ukrainians, but also anyone who wants peace, including Europe and even U.S. President Donald Trump personally.
Now, when everyone is trying so hard to end the war, Russia is striking ordinary homes, an ordinary city, deliberately, in groups of drones, and carefully adding missiles to cause even more destruction. Kharkiv is going through this, as are Sumy, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Our cities, our communities. The world needs a clear response to evil. There are no deadlines that Putin hasn't broken. There are no diplomatic opportunities that haven't been ruined by Russia. Strong actions are needed. I thank everyone who understands this. Sanctions are needed, tariffs are needed on those who sponsor this war in any way.
The Kremlin dictator's spokesperson, Peskov, called the killing of civilians in the very heart of Europe a successful strike on targets and described destroyed residential buildings, kindergartens, and shopping centers as strategic military objects. And he stated that this is normal since there were no agreements on an air ceasefire, even though it is Moscow that keeps avoiding them. Against this backdrop, the statement that Russia remains interested in continuing peace talks and is supposedly doing everything possible for this sounded extremely cynical.
This nighttime attack showed that Russia is ready to return to its deadly campaign of bombing cities. Although Trump had previously complained about such attacks and threatened to impose sanctions on Russian oil if they continued. In this context, the diplomatic rhetoric voiced by Peskov immediately after the strikes is seen as hypocritical, lacking in realism and empathy, especially when it comes to death and destruction in the heart of Ukraine. From a publication by The Telegraph.
Russia is only willing to negotiate strictly on its own terms. Any concession will be seen by the Kremlin as a sign of weakness and silent consent to further terror. The European Union understands this very well. That's why the main thing needed right now is to develop security guarantees for Ukraine. This was also stated by the EU's chief diplomat, Kaja Kallas, before the start of the European Union defense ministers meeting in Copenhagen.
At the European Union level, our contribution to security guarantees consists of training and military missions, as well as support for Ukraine's defense industry. All three of these elements are open to participation by third countries. Discussions are underway on how to amend the mandate of these initiatives to be prepared after any peace agreement is reached.
In addition, the European Union is preparing its 19th package of sanctions against Russia. The main focus will be on combating the shadow fleet of the aggressor country and the companies that help the Kremlin circumvent restrictions. At the same time, the EU is not really counting on Trump, who promised record tariffs on Russian oil and on countries that buy it, to finally take such a step. After all, Putin deceived him both during phone conversations and in person.
I assume that the United States of America will seriously consider the possibility of introducing additional sanctions, including secondary sanctions against Russia's partner countries. And I can only say on behalf of Europe that we are determined to continue pursuing a clear policy on this issue. The 19th package is being prepared, and Germany will take part in it. On Monday, we received confirmation of this from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who questioned Zelensky's constitutional status as the leader of Ukraine. I keep trying to explain to Trump that this is a typical Russian stalling tactic, and they're very skilled at it. Now it's only a matter of time before President Trump responds to this. The response might be related to military support for Ukraine and some sanctions aimed at countries doing business with Russia. It's still too early to say exactly what those will be, but I hope President Trump's patience will run out soon.
Any statements about peace and willingness to meet at the highest level in the Kremlin are made for one purpose only: to further stall the peace process. Because right after that, the Russian Foreign Ministry starts talking about the need to create some working groups and to thoroughly work through the documents. And no arguments work in this situation. Sanctions and force are the only things the aggressor understands.